This practice as research project acts as a bridge between my two lives. Growing up bilingual, my experience of life has always been different, and when I became an actor, I only explored and lived through the English part of my life. In this experiment, I explore the reading of a poem, Soneto de la Dulce Queja, by Federico García Lorca, a famous Spanish poet and playwright. I performed this poem 3 times,
and even worse,
once in English,
not having the wood's pulp, potter's clay, or flowers for the worm of my agony. If you are my buried treasure, if you are my cross,
once in Spanish.
No me dejes perder la maravilla de tus ojos de estatua, ni el acento que de noche me pone en la mejilla, la solitaria rosa de tu aliento. Tengo miedo de ser en esta orilla, tronco sin ramas.
And once changing the language at specific times during the poem, so that it would still make sense.
No me dejes perder the wondrous sight de tus ojos de estatua, o el acento you have of placing on my cheek at night la solitaria rosa de tu aliento. Tengo miedo being left like a limbless tree en esta orilla, y lo que más siento es no tener la flor, o arcilla, o pulpa, for my gusano of agony. Si tú eres el tesoro oculto mío, if you are my cruz and dolor mojado, si soy el perro de tu señorío, don't let me lose.
This last method is something called code switching. As Kristin Becker said in 1997, bilingual speakers have twice as many options to choose from as monolingual speakers when expressing their thoughts and ideas because their language repertoire is twofold. Not only can bilinguals choose from a variety of styles of speech within the same language, but they can also switch from one language or code system to the other. In the first reading in English, my voice and language patterns are sharp
I fear
and
being
closed,
left
ending
like a
with
limbless
T's
tree
and
on the
K's.
shoreline. And even worse, not having the wood's pulp, potter's clay, or flowers for the worm of my agony.
Such is the nature of English language. This caused the poem to seem unfamiliar to me. Granted, the poem is originally written in Spanish. However, this unfamiliarity is something that I have experienced before, especially in poems. The closed-off language and how I have to speak the poem and how it is written causes my voice to sound differently to my everyday voice, which causes my poem to feel disconnected from me. This causes my associative mind to not fully experience the poem, not to fully live in it, and experience the words of love spoken by Lorca. My intention was easy to delve into. The poem is a sonnet, and my intention is to profess love is still clear. However, I lacked in associations, actions, and impulses. This is a method taught to me by Bradley J. High, derived from Grotowski's work consisting of the 6 elements of craft: action, association, intention, impulse, presence. This caused the read to be shallow and uninteresting. It wasn't alive. This was also partly due to my everyday accent avoiding such sharp endings, due to the nature of the Spanish language, which is my native language. Which has a majority of vowel-ending words. Therefore, my Spanish reading was much more natural. As the poem was originally written in Spanish, it was a lot easier to read. I could relate to the words being spoken, so my relationship between the text and my inner workings was vastly different. The words weren't empty, they weren't lifeless. My intention was still clear, to profess love. However, this time, due to the words I was saying rolling off my tongue easier, and my increased understanding of the poem, due to it being originally a Spanish poem, my intention and impulses were even more effective. I associated the camera for an actual person, and my impulses reflected that. I had impulses throughout to change how words were said, either in changes, volume, accent, and more, which gave the reading a lot more colour. Overall, the Spanish performance was much more appealing, feeling more alive in my work and therefore easier to perform. The code switch version I found to be very challenging. Unlike the bilinguals that Kristin Becker talks about in her article, I did not grow up in an environment where 2 languages were spoken at the same time by the same people. Therefore, my quote-unquote bilingual skills, as Becker describes, aren't as developed as others.
No me dejes perder the wondrous sight de tus ojos de estatua, o el acento you have of placing on my cheek at night la solitaria rosa de tu aliento. Tengo miedo being left like a limbless tree en esta orilla, y lo que más siento es no tener la flor, o arcilla, o pulpa, for my gusano of agony. Si tú eres el tesoro oculto mío, if you are my cruz and dolor mojado, si soy el perro de tu señorío, don't let me lose lo que he ganado, and adorn the branches of your river con hojas de mi otoño enajenado.
This caused my read to be extremely challenging, even as to something as mundane as learning the lines. Even though I had learned the lines perfectly for the English and Spanish readings, I failed to fully learn the code-switched version, even though it was the same text with just changes in the language. Due to this, I was unable to have any associations or any actions. My intention was unclear. Due to me having to try and figure out how to change languages so often, my intention was not to profess love, but it was to remember when the changes were. I was unable to keep up with the code switching, which caused my reading to be unfamiliar and even worse than the English reading. The accent switches made the poem rigid and hard to listen to. It also felt unnatural, as my voice changed whenever my language changed. Overall, it was a very challenging read.
No me dejes perder la maravilla de tus ojos de estatua, ni el acento que de noche me pone en la mejilla, la solitaria rosa de tu aliento. Tengo miedo de ser en esta orilla, tronco sin ramas, y lo que más siento es no tener la flor, pulpa o arcilla.